car company. And my background started out on the car business side of the car business, and I ended up on the IT side about halfway through my career. I've been in the industry about 25 years now. Probably about 12 years ago, I switched over to IT audit and security work. As part of that role, working with the company, I was responsible for all their audit compliance, all of their security, disaster recovery plans, and I helped bring in the Sarbanes-Oxley compliance when that first came on, and the Y2K debacle and all that bit. So I've always been a bit of a geek, and that's a title that I'm not insulted by, to be called a geek. I think it's a good thing nowadays. So that's pretty much what brought me to where I am right now. In my current role as a business relationship manager, my responsibilities are to support the business and help them understand technology, make sure that they implement it properly, that they're serving the business and not exposing us to undue risk. And there's a lot there. The areas I'm responsible for are basically marketing and customer services. So one of the things we wanted to talk about here today is to just cover basically everything we tend to look at in InfraGard tends to have the security hat on all the time, and it doesn't always look at the practical side of things and how does the business actually apply some of this stuff. So what I wanted to share is, what are the things that the business is doing, how are they using social media. So the first thing, obviously, their objectives for success from the business perspective is the sales and marketing groups, they want to identify emerging trends and what the customers are wanting. They want to engage these prospects and cultivate them into sales, which social media is a wonderful tool for that, right? Because you have that dialogue going. And building brand ambassadors. And most sales organizations have some version of what's known as a sales funnel. I don't know if any of you have ever been involved in or attended a network marketing function, like an Amway, or I don't know what other companies are doing that right now. Some of the financial services companies are doing that also, like Primerica. And basically, they have a sales funnel. They have a very well-defined model of how they get people in the door, how they engage that conversation, how they convert it into a sale. And they always depict it as a funnel. This is just an example of one. But what ended up happening as a result of social media is you're changing to more of a marketing technology framework. So on the outside of this cone, you're starting in the path down the middle, you're starting from awareness. You want to build awareness in the marketplace of your products and services. Then that awareness becomes knowledge. Once people have knowledge about your products and services and what you're offering, it turns into consideration. So there's a lot of work that happens before they even consider looking at your product. And then they need to get you to a point of where you select their products and then satisfy you and have you go out and become that brand advocate to sell the brand on behalf of the company. And they want your loyalty so that you come back. And then the circles around it are showing, you start out with the conversation, which basically starts with social media today. And there's a lot there where companies no longer control it. In the old business model before social media, it was very well controlled. We paid for all the advertising, any messaging that went out, it was what we wanted you to hear. There was no true voice of the customer because you didn't have the customer forums where you can go out and blast an individual or a dealership or a product. It was very well controlled. But you no longer have that. So now from internally, the way most companies are looking at it is you have branding that overarches, what does your brand stand for? And then within that you have the marketing group whose job is basically to attract you to the brand, to start that conversation, get you close to the doors, and then once they get you in to consider the product, the sales team will take over. They want to get you using the product, buying the product, and being loyal to the company. And that's only one real aspect of how companies work, right? Within the car business itself, we also have the sales and marketing group whose responsibility it is to get you in the door, buy the product. Once you're out the door, then we have a service group, an after-sales group, whose responsibility is to keep you coming back to buy more products and services, right? In the car business, it's coming in for your oil changes, buying accessories, buying any kind of related or affiliated goods. In the luxury sector, we also have a concierge level of service. So we're tied to hotels, to phone companies. There's all kinds of affiliate programs out there where we receive a small income stream from handing over that consumer to that other business. And it might be totally unrelated, but it matches the lifestyle of somebody that buys the product. So it's very broad and it's very well supported by social media. This slide is just showing how broad that social media landscape has become. And Chris shared a lot of that with us this morning here. The primary ones that most companies in North America now are focusing on, and even abroad, are the Facebook, the LinkedIn, Twitter a little bit, and YouTube. But those are the four primary ones. But an interesting thing that happens, I don't know how many of you are using social media in your own lives, but you also have these status aggregators, or I don't think there is a real industry term for them yet, but it's the services like the Hootsuite, or there's another good one, Tweet something. But basically what it does is you sign up for the one service and you tie it to all your other social media accounts. So when you update your status, it gets updated across all of your tools.
Oh, like TripIt?
Yeah, TripIt's another one of it.
Yeah.
So, like for example, personally I use LinkedIn, I use YouTube, I use Foursquare, Yahoo. There's about 7 different services. So if I send out a tweet through Hootsuite, it hits all of it. And most of those networks are totally independent. They overlap very little, but it just shows you how much more amplified your voice becomes. Pretty much what social media has done is it's given every Tom, Dick, and Harry walking down the street the same platform that Ahmadinejad has when he comes to Columbia University. I mean, it's the same media tools, and if you can build the audience, the voice is the same. It's just do people choose to listen? Is there relevance to them? So what are companies doing or how is this supporting companies to build their marketing success? One thing that companies know very well nowadays is that people don't trust them. Right? I mean, everyone I know personally, I mean, I always use the car business example because I know it so well. I've spent most of my life in the industry. To this day, I will not go into a showroom not knowing what I'm going to buy. If I go into a car dealership, I've already researched it. I know exactly what I want to buy, what's in it, what I'm going to pay for it, what's available in the marketplace, the history of the vehicle, and I'll know what's on that dealership's lot. And if I've already picked the vehicle that I want, a specific vehicle, I even have the service history of that vehicle in my pocket when I walk in. So I know what the customer experienced, which is very different, and it's not the normal business model that a lot of salesmen are used to dealing with. Those of you that have bought cars over the past 15, 20 years, you walk into a showroom and you have the spiel of, they'd walk in, they'd size you up based on how you're dressed. Did you come in alone with your spouse? Did you have kids? And they knew what you should buy. They knew how much you could afford to buy. And if you didn't look like you could afford to buy what they think you want to buy, they wouldn't talk to you. A couple of years back, I went into one of the Ford dealerships on Long Island, and I purposely do this. If I'm buying a car, I refuse to dress up for somebody that I'm giving money to. So on a Saturday afternoon, I went into this Ford dealer out in Hempstead, and we're looking at this beautiful Ford Expedition, fully decked out, had satellite TV, multiple screens, nav, you name it. It was over $50,000. But I walked in with a pair of jogging shorts and a tank top, and 2 kids in tow. They were all sitting around the corner eating their donuts and like, yeah, I hope he doesn't steal anything off of that car. No one came over, no one talked to me. But what I was going in there to buy was a Focus wagon, just a cheap commuter car. As soon as I walked over to that, here come the flies. Yeah, they all flew over, they were all ready to sign me up. And once you buy that, then come talk to our F&I manager. You need undercoating, you need this, you need that, you need an extended warranty. And being that I'm on the inside, I said, no, here's what I want, here's what it costs you, here's what I'm going to pay you. And no, I don't need your financing, I have my own, I'll have the check tomorrow. So it's a very different way of doing business to what these guys are accustomed to. And it really freaks them out. So now, as manufacturers, we have to rely on social media to get people in the showrooms, because we know that you don't want to talk to that salesman. because a lot of them don't do a good job. So what we're doing is we're building these fan pages. We're taking advantage of enthusiasts that are out there. There are people that just follow brands. Some of them will never buy your product, but we have to leverage that you do like it and people like to be heard. So we have to leverage those enthusiasts, make them subject matter experts of our products, right? Because people will listen to them. And one thing that companies have to realize, and a lot of them still don't, is that social media is what I call a social sport, right? A lot of companies, and we've even seen it with celebrities, aren't realizing that it's all about people connecting, and that's a lot of what we talked about this morning. You can't hire somebody to do this for you, to go out and represent you. You have to be that person. And you have to bring your executives on board, you have to bring your brand managers on board, and they have to be passionate about your brands, they have to be knowledgeable. A lot of times what we're seeing in car showrooms is the customers walk in and they know more about the product than the guy selling it. Relevance is something really important, and I think it was the previous speaker talked about that, about what builds these groups on the internet. You have to have relevance. There's a lot of noise out there, as I mentioned. We all have the same platform. When Ahmadinejad, as much as the world hates him, goes to Columbia University and he talks about different things, people are bound by that hatred for him, so they want to listen to him, and even if it means nothing to your life, you listen to it for some reason, right? But I could be up here talking about social media, and my audience might not extend past this this room. But the tools, I mean, this presentation will be up on the InfraGuard website tomorrow, and it's open to the same platform as as a world leader would have. So the same audience can see, but you have to have some kind of relevance. There's a good case study out on the web that if you Google Ford Festiva YouTube, you'll find a lot of white papers on what Ford did to introduce the Ford Festiva last year. They basically ran a competition, and they gave a small group of people early access to the product long before it was available. And they let them drive it, they let them play around with it, take it to different events, they brought them around, and whoever was the most socially vibrant person that gathered the biggest audience won a one-year lease of the product. So if you think about it, with the level of market penetration that gives a company, it costs them next to nothing. I mean, a Ford Festiva lease is probably like $150 a year. I mean, a month, rather, sorry. And that's what they gave away, $150 a month, so it cost them $1,500, $1,700, $1,800 for the whole campaign. And you had thousands of people running around with flip cameras, with cell phones, recording things, talking to their friends, trying to get everybody to look at it, trying to get people to come out to events. It cost them nothing. So it's really a powerful tool, and not every company is using it effectively. So that's your crowdsourcing. Was the Ford Festiva movement is the name of it. So what you're doing in these sites when you create these fan pages is you're letting those brand ambassadors, you're giving them the information, you're controlling what gets out there, because people, when you get into these enthusiast groups, they seem to like to prove each other wrong. So as long as you're consistent in what you put out there about your product and make sure that it's clear and everyone knows what you're bringing, the horsepower of and the different capabilities of your product, what it can and can't do, these people will run out there and rip each other apart, literally, to be the first one to get the message out there, to educate all their friends about what your product can do. So you build those crowds. And as I mentioned earlier, you have to use multiple media tools out there. A lot of the stuff that people are doing and intelligence groups are doing to learn about what people talk about online is commercialized. There are plenty of marketing companies. I get inundated with requests and proposals every day of all these companies that can bring me a pre-qualified group of people that will buy our products, because they're looking at what are you doing on different fan pages, what are you doing in your Facebook pages, your LinkedIn pages, where do you go, where do you shop. They'll find patterns in the data that people that buy, let's say, Godiva chocolates tend to buy a certain color of car. They'll actually try to sell that to us as lists that, hey, we have this people, and we found that of all the people that bought these chocolate on a Tuesdays, they also drove product X. So they're your demographic, and that's who you need to go after. And there's tons of that going on. This is an example of what we're doing with the Range Rover Evoque. I don't know if any of you are enthusiasts of the Range Rover brand, but Range Rovers are known around the globe for being the most capable SUVs out there, or one of the most. There's several that challenge that title. And we're bringing in a new smaller SUV that's going to go after a whole new market. And they're going after the younger market that's on the social media sites and everything else. So you can see down at the bottom here, it doesn't come out very well in black, but we have a Pulse of the City project. And if you go there, there are applications that you can download onto your Android or your iPhone. And we have several campaigns running around the country where we have wireframe models of this vehicle that are really cool looking futuristic models of the vehicle. They look like something out of the movie Tron. And they're putting them out as art displays around the country. And the people that are using these tools on their smartphones are out there tweeting about it, taking pictures about it, talking about who they've met, what celebrities they saw there. So there's a whole bunch of buzz tied around it. But the main driver to the buzz is the brand enthusiast, not the company really. We're enabling it, but it's the brand enthusiast that's really pushing it and making it happen. So it's interesting to see how this takes shape. And another piece that's changing in the business model for people, everyone always talks about ROI, return on investment. So marketing people wanted to know, if I go out there and I spend X number of dollars on a commercial, I want to see an uplift in sales somewhere down the road. So they had a concentrated, because marketing and media was so expensive, they had a concentrated audience to say these people have a high propensity to buy that kind of product. They have the means, they have the desire, so we're going to market only to them because we don't want to give a brochure to everyone on the street. They're expensive. But with social media and online marketing, it's cheap. And we can leverage the fans out there by giving them the information, and they're going out and they're hitting thousands and millions of people with that information. And from there, you're naturally going to bubble up a certain portion of people that are going to come in and look at it, and then even a smaller portion that will actually buy in the end. So when you look at those conversion rates, a lot of the business people now are looking at it and saying, well, wow, your conversion rates are horrible. Well, that's because the population that you're hitting going in is much bigger. So yeah, of course, everyone wants to look at a cool new product, whether it's a phone or a car or whatever it is. You're going to have a lot more fans or a lot more people that think it's cool that are actually going to go out and take money out of their pocket to buy it. So it's interesting how that's changing. So if you click on that link, it'll take you out. In this case, I clicked on the iPhone link. It brings you out to the iTunes store, gives you a little description about it, and then it puts that app on your store, on your phone, and it'll capture where you are, who you are, and further down the road, this stuff all gets tracked in a database, and they can also report on, they can come out with models that say, this person is going to buy this, this person's not. So they know where to further filter out, who the target audience is. And another thing that this does for a luxury brand is when you cull out all those people that won't buy, it enables you to spend your money more wisely and give nicer perks to the people that do. So one of the things that we introduced on the Range Rover brand now is the welcome kits. They used to always send you out this really nice kit that was a big box that had all these different brochures and additional services and all the things we'll do for you to make your brand experience richer. That's been converted down to a little deck of cards that has a cool pull-out section in it. It has a USB card in it, and you plug it into your computer, and it's fully customized, and it'll take your photo album of your personal pictures and build a mosaic that turns into the vehicle, which is pretty slick. I wish I was able to get my hands on that.
That's pretty cool.
But it'll take your personal pictures that have nothing to do with the product, and it'll look like your car when you plug it in.
I think they do on television.
Yeah.
So anybody gaming this thing yet?
What's that?
Is anybody gaming it yet?
What are you turning it into games? Or?
No. People sometimes game these freebies. They find out about it and they game it. They figure out what kind of
how to scam them?
How to scam? Yeah.
No,
how to go into it and actually get the free gift.
Yeah, we haven't found that yet.
They call that gaming.
The main thing, the main trigger for somebody to get one of these is to buy the product. So once you register your vehicle at a dealership and it goes to motor vehicle and you get the tags, that's when the bids come to us and we fulfill it. But I mean, at some point, that actually wouldn't be a bad thing for us that people steal it. That would be a great thing because it means you're building that enthusiasm for the product and you want people to go out there and talk about it. So we're in a bit of a unique situation with it.
It's a win-win.
Yeah.
Tom, on your you said you were happy that you found who this person is, the location. How definitive is that? I mean, we'll talk about Bergen County, for example. I know you're in Marlow. That determines someone is from Ridgewood, from Wyckoff, those towns. So that gives you a sort of an income.
A demographic model, yeah. Very high level. Yeah. And one of the things that a lot of salesmen are learning to do now is use real estate sites like Trulia and what's the other big one? What's that? Zillow, yeah. You go in there, you punch in a street address, it'll give you the home value. And it's not very difficult, at least in New York City, to go out. If I know your name, I can figure out your address quickly and then go over to the New York City government sites and see your tax bill and your mortgage papers online without logging into anything. Just, kind of scary. But yeah, it is what it is. Yeah. One thing that's really interesting I came across on Facebook a few weeks ago with a friend was, we're all sharing pictures of, our kids' first day of school and stuff like that. And this woman posted a picture of her kids in front of her house. The only thing you see about her is on her profile it says she lives in New York City. Doesn't even say that she lives in Queens. And you see the house number behind her. So I took the house number and Queens, New York, punched it in Google Maps, and it shows you a picture of her front door that you look at side by side with her picture and say, yep, that's where she lives. Yeah. So it's those little things people don't pay attention to. So this is just an example of the result that Ford got from the Festiva movement. You had tons and tons of videos that people were producing out there, and each one of the videos was getting hundreds of thousands of hits. That was giving them free marketing about the product and what it does. And this is what what we're doing with the Range Rover Evoque. The car really has only been seen in North America out in San Francisco about 2 months ago, and it's going to be at the New York Auto Show next. Is it April? April we come to New York Auto Show, and I believe Chicago is next week. So those are the only 3 viewings of an actual product. No one has really driven them in the U.S. press yet, but there are tons of videos from foreign press and the press where they've been already that are showing you what it's like, how different it is from the current product, what the capabilities are, and the ones that seem to have the loudest voices out there are the ones that really get into it, that beat on the product a little bit, and they're enthusiasts, and they tell people how great it is. So when it does come to your city, people are just clamoring to get into them. They want to drive them. We're already getting paid orders for them, but we don't have any product in the country. And we're not spending a huge amount of money on this yet. So considerations and challenges, as I mentioned earlier, the traditional models for return on investment are challenged because you have a lower cost per unit to do this, so people are expecting to save money. They're actually spending more money because it's cheap. They're able to hit bigger audiences. So internally, some of the budgets are slightly bigger. They're spending more because you want to target it and you want to control the message going out there. But your footprint is much bigger because you have those brand enthusiasts going out there and spreading the word based on what you've told them. So it's kind of an evangelical process, right? It's kind of like the priest getting up on the pulpit and telling the masses what to do, and go out and spread the good word, right? You have significantly larger audiences, and as a result, you have lower conversion rates. experiential continuity. The speed to market is incredibly fast. The cost of doing it is very low. And what it ends up doing is it attests to the alignment you have within your company between departments. Right, so as I mentioned earlier, we have our sales and marketing group, and then we have our after sales and service groups, where they all have different missions. I mean, we all have a common goal to make money for the company and the brands overall. But the sales guys and the marketing guys, they're all about getting people in the showroom, selling you that new car. Once it's out the door, as far as their personal performance and what they're going to get in their paycheck, nothing else really matters to that group. Then it gets to the next group that has to make sure that your satisfaction remains high, that the vehicle's not breaking down in service. Well, that doesn't keep dealerships open, so now what do we want you to buy? We want you to buy nicer tires, snow tires, nicer rims, different knobs and things. We have, plenty of different things you can buy to add onto your car, which are, depending on who you talk to. I mean, personally, I won't buy them because I don't see the value to pull the money out of my own personal pocket. Right? I'm just cheap. But you have that group that does that. And then when the vehicles, as they go out, they tend to be on lease. Most people are leasing now. After they come back from lease, you have another group of people that are monitoring how the vehicles are performing in service, what kind of experiences people have, and getting ready to take them back in, put them through an auction process, a reconditioning process, and sell them as used vehicles again, or certified pre-owned. So there's a lot of complexity to the business, and each one of these groups are trying to do their own thing, because everybody has to be on Twitter, one has to be on YouTube, but because it's so cheap and easy and fast to do, they don't always talk to each other. Sometimes their messages are negating each other. So it creates some interesting dynamic in the workplace. And compliance. Leadership and training, I believe, are now more important than ever, because as one of the other speakers mentioned, whatever you put out in the public domain, you don't need a subpoena for. Every company has some sort of consumer issues going on, whether you're selling lipstick or toothpaste or whatever it is. There's always someone suing the company. You have to be cognizant of who are the people out there that are tweeting, even in their personal time. If you have an engineer that's going out and going out on Facebook and telling his friends like, gee, this is really stupid, why do they do this? Now all of a sudden he's hauled into court to testify why he said it was stupid. And who else did you tell in the company, and when did they know it? And how did you not elevate this to a level of management to address the issue before someone got hurt? So it raises some very interesting and complex compliance issues for the companies. And it's something that you really need to address. Joe mentioned the question before about InfraGard looking at, should we get involved in social media? My answer to that is that everyone is involved in social media. It's whether or not you're participating that's the question. So at a bare minimum, every company should be listening. The social media listening is a big trend. At a bare minimum, you should know what people are saying about you. And security, I think, as I mentioned earlier, leaves endless opportunities. WikiLeaks is an example for the government, but there's just endless holes to security. And anyone in your company, if they're having a bad day, could cut and paste things into Facebook from any one of your systems, no matter how secure they are. So you have to know your people, you have to know what's going on within your company and what they have access to and what they're doing, both while they're on your premises and even depending on their position when they're off your premises. Emerging trends, experiential monitoring. We have a lot of companies out there now that are tracking what you're doing on websites. Even if you're not registering to use the website, they will track where your mouse cursor is going, what are you clicking on, how much time you're spending on a page, what do you do next, where did you come from, to try to model to see what is it that interests you, what captivates you. I mean, if everyone's looking at just the in-vehicle entertainment features or nav, whatever the feature is, well, gee, maybe that's really important. We need to focus more attention on that. But no one looks at how many cubic feet of storage space you have in the trunk. So, well, let's not worry about that too much because it's not having an impact on your sales. So everyone is looking at stuff like that, and the way that we try to tie into the individual is apps. Most apps you have to register for, if you're getting it from iTunes for your iPhone, then you're registering on the iTunes site, so they know who you are. Companies are always willing to share that information of who you are for a price. In the past couple of years, there's been a lot of reform in the rules around what can be shared between companies. And one of the things when we were with Ford Motor Company that we had the privilege of was we had Ford Credit, which is a huge finance arm of Ford, and actually for most years made more money than Ford Motor Company did itself, just from financing. We were able to get all the information about consumers as far as where they live, their financial means, credit histories, job histories, and it helped us create that image of a customer. Where are they coming from? What are they doing in their spare time? When they reformed the Credit Acts, they severed that so that a financial institution can only share information that's relevant to the transaction. So as a manufacturer, now we can only know, even Ford has this issue internally now, they had to put walls up between the companies, that the finance group still needs to know all the same information because that's their business. But the manufacturing side and sales side of the business can only know what you bought, the sticker price of the vehicle, and whether you leased or and what the lease term was as far as the time frame of the lease, and that's pretty much it. There's not a whole lot more they were able to get. So now we're forced to work with other financial companies, like some of the big New York banks here, where we can't get that information, but they're willing to come out with a special offer for their customers that has us branding below their brand. So Chase Sapphire is an example of that. We have some stuff going out where that's supposed to be an elite group of credit customers. So we don't know how much money they're really making and where they live and all that bit. But we do know that they did have the means to qualify for this higher level of credit from the bank, and we have to push our marketing information out under that banner now. So it raises the cost of doing business, raises the complexity. One of the things that I'm always fearful of, and I'm very careful of when we bring in applications for these different business areas, is why do people want things? We recently had a need where we needed to append data to a database that would tell this one group what the lease terms were. And all it gives them is the vehicle identification number and what the lease end date is. Only so that they can stage the staffing appropriately at auctions, so that they know they have 100 cars coming into this auction. They know how many people to bring in, what they're going to need as far as facilities, how long it'll take to move them through, and when they're coming in. I'm really leery about putting controls around that to make sure that now they can't take that unique identifier of your VIN number and join it to this other database where there's that your name, address, and everything else with your VIN number. Tie the two together on VIN, and now I can go about marketing to those people, because we're not allowed to do it. So we make sure we put the walls up, but it creates a lot of challenges, and we have to fight the business a lot of times, saying they'll look at us and say that we're not a business enabler, and that's what IT is. But in some cases, we have to make sure that we don't enable them to do the wrong things.
So you're saying one part of your company can get the information to figure out how many people to put on staff for those 2 months, but the marketing people can use the same information to pre-market somebody when they know.
Correct.
We
know you're going to be in market, your car's coming off lease, or you're coming back. We can't go out and tell you.
But they could keep the stuff in their own personal indexes. So the role indexes become the important piece now.
Yep. But they're all, they're in corporate systems. There are firewalls and controls around them, and we have to look at separation of duties matrices to make sure that you can do functions A and B, but not C and D.
Who owns the data and who can use it is two very different things.
And that also becomes challenging with social media when you work with a lot of these marketing firms, because they're capturing all the customer data, but are they keeping it, and what are they doing with it once that account is gone? So we have to make sure that we get all that data in-house. It's our data, and we can use it appropriately. I mentioned to Chris and Phil earlier this morning, I got an email yesterday from an Acura dealer in New Jersey saying, where have you been? You haven't been in for service in the longest time. I've never done business with them. But I have done business with their Lincoln Mercury dealership from the same auto group. So they went out of business. Apparently somebody thought it would be a good idea to go out and market to people. It would have been nice if they were at least smart enough to use my name and say, we know you were a customer here, and we trust and value that relationship. So come over and take a look at this. But no, they just said, we haven't seen your Acura in the longest time. I've never owned one in my life. Crowdsourcing, I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of marketing companies now that are looking at those behavioral tendencies. What are people doing? What are they looking at? It can be totally unrelated to the products that we're marketing, but they're still coming to us and saying, you know, people that live in this zip code tend to have their kids in a private school, you know, they tend to have expensive vehicles in this price range, and that's where you fit, so, you know, we'll sell you this list.
There's a book out called Tipping Point. That's the beginning part of this kind of analysis.
Yeah,
The experts that make the tipping point occur.
That's pretty much all. Any questions?